What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Week 15 edition of the Underdog Drafterparty. I'm Jake Tribbey, here as always with my great co-host, one of the best football writers around, Ryan Heath. Me and Ryan will be drafting some Battle Royale teams, talking about our favorite scroll down options, and discussing contest-specific strategy throughout the show. We can also get to any pressing Week 15 questions you guys may have. I know the fantasy playoffs are starting this week. Also a great DFS slate. NFL finally did a good job breaking things up. 7 early games, 5 afternoon games. So really, really fun week of football. Ryan, before we get into some of these underdog plays, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I am geared up and ready for the fantasy playoffs. I feel like usually this time of year, I'm kind of like broken down and like ready for the season to be over, but I'm enjoying it, man. I'm excited for this slate, excited for everything this weekend.
Yeah, I feel like that's generally the consensus as people start to get pretty burnt out near the end of the season. I think fantasy playoffs does suck a bunch of people back in. And I mean, Ryan, to be fair, big lifestyle changes becoming a full-time fantasy football writer. So no room for you to be burnt out this late in the year. I'm really excited. I avoided the drunk combine by about a point last week. I know we spent a lot of time talking about fantasy punishments. I do not have to run every NFL combine drill while taking a shot of hard liquor between each drill. That was incredible run out from Rico Dowdle. Jonnu Smith getting me 13 points in overtime was absolutely insane. That was thrilling, but we will talk about some of these underdog plays here. We'll go position by position. We'll talk about contests after that, and then we will hop into some drafts. Feel free to ask any questions you guys may have at any point, but we generally get to questions a little bit later in the show here. Ryan, quarterback position. Josh Allen looks like an awesome play. This Buffalo-Detroit game, as you guys can see on the screen here, thanks to the lovely tools at bestballoverlay.com. Bills game has the highest total of the season at 54.5. Josh Allen coming off the greatest quarterback fantasy performance of all time against the Detroit defense that has historically struggled against rushing quarterbacks. I mean, this feels like an awesome spot, but an ADP of 2.5 is a pretty tough pill to swallow. Obviously, I still want some exposure here. You guys can see I've already taken about 18% Josh Allen across, 14, 15 drafts so far. Where are you at on Allen and where are you at on some of these other high-end quarterbacks?
Yeah, I'm drafting him. It's very annoying in BR it's for most weeks of the season, it's very nice because Josh Allen specifically is always overdrafted in BR. I don't know why. It is great most weeks out of the season. Any week that I'm not interested in playing him, I'm like, okay, cool, I'll take the EV. But there's always a few weeks in each season where I really, really want to play Josh Allen, and it's super annoying that I have to pay up to get him at the 102 right now. I'm gonna do it, but yeah, it's pretty frustrating. But yeah, I mean, just to add to what you've said, just so many incredible indicators for Allen in this matchup. Obviously, highest total game of the season, as you said. He's averaging over 32 DraftKings points in close games. The Bills are 2.5-point underdogs. Huge efficiency boosts against man coverage, which the Lions play a lot. So, yeah, I will be taking a lot of Allen. Probably just mixing in single stacks with Khalil Shakir, with Amari Cooper. But yeah, it is gonna be a stand I take on this slate.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I still want plenty of Allen as well. I think in 6-man drafts, taking Allen really isn't too painful. You can come back around, especially if he falls to pick 3 or 4. Pretty easy to land Amon-Ra as well and build out a decent game stack from there. I think in 12-man drafts, Allen is a much harder pill to swallow because we have such great depth at the quarterback position this week. Guys like Anthony Richardson, Bo Nix, Drake May, Jameis Winston are all going to be on the board when you're, drafting the 11th, 12th quarterback in 12-man drafts. And it does feel like you're giving up, a pretty significant opportunity cost taking Allen that early relative to some of these other skill position players. Talking about some of these other quarterbacks here, Lamar Jackson just isn't a guy I have a ton of interest in given the game environment. As you can see, Baltimore favored by 16.5 points, which is absolutely wild. Really screams Derrick Henry game more so than a Lamar Jackson game. I just don't have a lot of faith the New York Giants can push here. Joe Burrow, always a great play. I think QB3, right around 21 ADP, very, very reasonable for him. Jaden Daniels, I sort of feel similarly to him as I do Lamar Jackson, where I just don't have a lot of confidence that Jake Haener, New Orleans Saints can really push here. Hurts in a gross game environment against Pittsburgh, I don't love. Really, for me, it's sort of, I want a little bit of Allen. I want a little bit of Burrow. And then after that, I'm looking at scroll down options, starting with Tua, who's in a fantastic spot. I think this Miami-Houston game, we talked about this a lot on Cashing Points, is, right there. Obviously, in total, it's about 8 points back. But to me, it's, for fantasy, right there with this Bills-Lions game in terms of raw fantasy upside. Ryan, after these top 6 quarterbacks, anyone else stand out to you as a scroll down? I know I already acknowledged some of the later round 12-man draft picks in AR Stroud or AR Knicks, Drake May, Jameis, anybody else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll play Jameis in 6-mans. I have no issue doing that.
Oh yeah,
there.
Me too.
Yeah, this game environment should be insane. The Chiefs are like a top 7 pass funnel, 3rd most deep receiving yards per game allowed over the last month. We're seeing the offense condense with Njoku possibly out, with Tillman likely out. So you can just easily just do the Jameis double with Elijah Moore, with Jerry Jeudy. Very into that. Other than that, I think it makes a lot of sense to go to Jared Goff as well if we feel really convicted about this Buffalo game environment. Goff has been pretty efficient on a per drop back basis. Anytime he's having to drop back a bunch, then that's generally a pretty good sign. The Bills have had a lot of trouble getting pressure, especially over the last 3-4 weeks. That benefits Goff a ton on unpressured dropbacks. He's about as efficient as Josh Allen is on a per drop back basis. So that's someone I am interested in going to. And then I guess the last guy I really want to call out is Bo Nix, for fairly similar reasons as Goff. We have seen him hit these fairly big ceiling games when he has been kept clean. So his fantasy points per drop back when unpressured goes from like Deshaun Watson levels efficiency up to Joe Burrow levels efficiency. Colts 2nd worst pressure rate. So yeah, we've seen him go to 29, 32 fantasy points in some of these games where he's kept clean. So yeah, there's so many good quarterback options. This is like my favorite kind of BR slate where there's so many different ways to stack it up, and you don't even have to worry about scrolling down a ton at other positions, I think. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. There are a ton of great game environments to attack, a ton of great quarterback spots to attack this week. I think my only concern with Knicks is that I am a little worried the Indianapolis offense just doesn't show up at all. Obviously, Knicks could still get you there in that situation, but Denver defense has been pretty strong. They bring a ton of pressure. Does concern me a bit for Anthony Richardson, who's also a guy that I still want a little bit of exposure to because we know what AR can do. So yeah, as me and Ryan have highlighted, a lot of great directions to go.
I will just quickly on that game. I will say this is effectively like a playoff game, or like a win and most likely get into the playoffs for both of these teams. They're both kind of competing for that spot. The winner of this game is most likely going to get in based on their remaining schedules. So if there were any week for Shane Steichen to just let AR run absolutely wild and kind of do everything they can to keep the ball moving, then I think this would be it. If they want to make the playoffs, which I assume they do, based on all the previous discourse about their locker room. So yeah, I'm fairly optimistic about that game environment.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, guys, really appreciate the questions in the chat. Once we get through our position by position analysis, we can start answering some start sit questions. Obviously, I know this is a huge week for start sit, so definitely want to pay a little extra mind to those. But talking about running backs, I think the high end of running back, makes a lot of sense here. I don't really have any qualms with taking Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley as massive favorites. Joe Mixon is seeing really elite usage. And again, this Houston-Miami game environment could be really, really strong. Chase Brown, sort of same thing, except, he's not even at risk of getting, Mixon has a little bit of risk. If Miami got out to a huge lead, we'd see a bit more Agumbawale. Chase Brown, obviously going to suck up all those great pass reps there for Cincinnati. Ryan, I think after RB4, things get a little bit more interesting. Obviously, Chuba Hubbard stands out as a massive value. Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane are guys that we know have great upside. What stands out to you at the running back position this week?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to me is that, yes, while the Derrick Henrys and the Saquon Barkleys we know are capable of hitting these massive ceilings, I part of the reason I'm okay like eating the Josh Allen first round pick ADP is because I don't think that the Chase Browns, the Jahmyr Gibbs specifically in a game stack, the Devon Achans or the Chuba Hubbards are that far off of those other guys. Like I think in terms of overall upside, I would rather have Allen plus Achan or Allen plus Hubbard than Derrick Henry and like a non-Josh Allen quarterback. So I'm okay making that trade-off just because of how deep the position is at the top. But after Hubbard specifically, there is a bit of a drop-off, and there aren't that many scroll downs I'm super interested in. And I think that's because of how good the position is at the top. There just aren't that many guys where I'm like, oh, I can see them beating all of these guys, maybe some of them, but not all of them. Yeah. The only real exception to that for me is going to be Rachaad White. Obviously, the Buccaneers have a top 3 value backfield by expected fantasy points. Assuming Bucky Irving's not going to play, I think is fairly safe to assume at this point based on his practice participation, or even if he does, he'll likely be severely limited. This is looking like a really great all-purpose role for Rachaad White. I'm shocked his ADP is still at 35.5. He's still going undrafted in the majority of drafts. I just see no reason to click a scroll down running back other than Rachaad White right now. Like if we get to Sunday morning or whatever, and you're in desperate need of a scroll down running back and White's not there, I don't know. Maybe things start to open up a little bit more for me. Like I can talk myself into like the Jonathan Taylors as like game script specific bets. But yeah, it's kind of just the elite guys in Rachaad White for me this week is going to mainly be my pool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same for me. It is a bit shocking that Rachaad White's ADP has not come up a bit more here, but I guess people are still waiting for the Bucky Irving news, maybe holding out a little bit of hope that Irving will end up playing, which just does not look particularly likely. And as you highlighted, Rachaad White, really, really strong value. We actually have him a 1/10 of a point higher than Jahmyr Gibbs this week in our half-point projections. Really strong week at running back. I think we did a great job covering that. At wide receiver, to me, wide receiver really comes down to I want, a top 4 guy, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Nico, Jamar Chase. That's always great. After that, I'm just kind of looking to flesh out my stacks because this is such a deep week at quarterback. I really want to pay attention to, who I want to draft at quarterback and then what wide receivers I'm going to pair them with. Ryan, does anybody stand out to you outside of those top 4 options? Because I feel like they're pretty strong plays overall relative to ADP.
Yeah, I agree there. I guess the guys I'd be interested in like as one-off values outside of game stacks is mostly going to be T. Higgins and Cortland Sutton. Higgins, I think projects as our wide receiver 3 right now, or at least when I looked this morning. The volume has just been so good. It's been so well concentrated between Chase and Higgins. Obviously, you prefer the upside of Chase, but getting that type of role from a Higgins at a 22 ADP just seems very strong to me. Sutton, I like obviously as a stack with Knicks, but he benefits from kind of all the same things I just laid out with Knicks, with the Colts not getting much pressure. He's a little bit better against cover 3 as well. So that's decent. And then I guess the scroll down that really pops to me is Brian Thomas Jr. I know you guys went back and forth a little bit on caching points just in terms of what is the upside for like a Mac Jones receiver, but it's an elite schematic matchup. The Jets are this big deep funnel. They play all this single high, even against freaking Tyreek Hill. They were the one team dumb enough to play single high against Tyreek Hill this season. They paid for it. BTJ has benefited in basically the same way. We have seen Mac Jones at least target BTJ deep downfield. Like he has missed him on a few walk-in touchdowns, but those can at a 35.7 ADP, those go his way, and he's like wrecking the slate like that.
Yeah.
That this is the only player I think can completely wreck the slate from like an undrafted wide receiver ADP. So yeah, he just really pops to me, and especially with Engram out as well. There's just nowhere else for the ball to go.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that argument. I think I am a bit lower on BTJ than you, but I would agree overall that I think this is a really strong spot relative to ADP. I think especially in 12-man drafts, he's a guy that I'm going to look at a lot for like a 5th, 6th round pick. 6-man's a bit of a tougher sell, but again, I think the big thing with the wide receiver position this week is you're really just wanting to pair your wide receivers with your quarterback, because this is such a great quarterback slate, such a great slate to stack. A lot of strong game environments here. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone else I want to call out in particular. Yeah, these, I think we covered wide receiver adequately overall. Tight end is sort of interesting this week. You know, it's not an amazing tight end slate, but it is a relatively deep tight end slate. We have, you know, Trey McBride against New England, who's projecting quite well. Travis Kelce is a guy that I'm not quite as excited to draft, although I have drafted a bit more Kelce so far on my teams. He's just been underperforming expectation by a pretty decent bit. I don't know how much upside he really has left in the tank, but obviously the volume could turn around on a dime there, and Kelce could still crush. Johnny Smith is a guy that I really like. He's probably my favorite of the top 3. Ryan, what are your thoughts on those top 3 tight ends, and then any scroll downs that pop to you this week?
Yeah, I kind of have no issue with the ADPs of any of the top 3, and I do think it's a pretty clear top 3. Kelce at least has been a lot better against single high this year, which the Browns play a lot, of course. So I think with where he's going, I will have a decent amount of him. Yeah, I really want to have a top 3 tight end on as many teams as possible. Haven't drafted all that much yet. Don't know how realistic that's going to be in terms of, can I do that while I'm building out all the stacks I want to? But that's at least going to be the goal going in. Because yeah, probably the guy I'm most interested in after the top 3 is Hunter Henry. He at least has a favorable schematic matchup with the Cardinals playing a bunch of zone. They've been kind of funneling everything to the slot and underneath, which should be benefiting Henry. I don't know, like Austin Hooper is way too involved in this offense for my liking personally, but I mean, Henry projects fairly well, projects as a value for us too. So he's kind of the scroll down I would call out. Other than that, I think just stick to game stacks with tight end as well. Although there aren't really that many great spots for it either. Like you can definitely do Ertz with like Jaden Daniels if you're drafting him. Aside from that, I kind of like mixing Schultz into like some Houston Miami stacks if I get sniped on Jonnu. I also don't hate Kincaid as sort of a last second, desperation. I want some Buffalo Detroit exposure. I want to expand on my game stack a little bit there. I mean, Kincaid was a guy who, if we, rewinded 2 months, he would have been the tight end 5 probably on this slate. So, tight end 11 for Kincaid definitely feels pretty decent here. All right, Ryan, we can talk about some contests, and then we can get to any pressing questions in the chat while we draft some of these underdog teams. Again, guys, really appreciate all the questions. When it comes to contests, they made the main battle royale and the Wildcat a little bit smaller this week. They did not make the goal line stand smaller. The goal line stand for me is going to be a huge priority this week because there are no guarantees in life, but I would say very close to guaranteed that this tournament overlays in some capacity. I would be pretty shocked if it got to a 90% fill. I think 80% fill is, my rough estimation for where this tournament will get, which means, you submit a $15 entry. It's probably worth $15.50 or something like that, which you just rarely get the opportunity to do in these gambling markets, fire off plus EV entry. So goal line stand, huge priority for me. If you like 12 team drafts and you have the budget to submit a bunch of goal line stand entries, I think this is, arguably the best week all year to do it. And it's a very, very deep week for 12 team drafts. I hope we can get into a goal line stand tonight. We can sort of show off what I'm saying there. But I think beyond that, everything else has stayed relatively the same. Fullback dive and the bomb are both great contests. And then you just kind of get into early only community contests, late contests. Biggest change would be to Battle Royale Wildcat getting smaller, goal line stand not going to fill. They made it too big again.
And I'm a huge fan of 12-man drafts, so this is a great week for me. Ryan, let's see how the goal line stand is looking so far. And we need 6 more. So let's hop into a wildcat here, and then we can get to any pressing questions in the chat. Obviously, fantasy football playoffs are starting this week, so totally understand if you want to ask plenty of start-sit questions this week. Ryan, first question here while we wait for this wildcat to fill. Pick 2, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Breece Hall. This is definitely a tough one. I think one of them is going to end up being MHJ, although I should check our projections before I speak firmly. Do you have a take on this? So our injury expert, Edwin Porras, noted that he thinks there's a decent chance Hall could be limited. Hall sort of expressed frustration with where he was in the rehab process about 3 days ago. Where are you at on these 3 players?
Yeah, there's definitely the most downside risk to Hall. Not that there isn't downside risk to either Harrison or Neighbors. I think I'd be playing Harrison and Neighbors.
Sort of my lean as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Hall at any point can get dinged up and knocked out of the game. There were multiple points 2 weeks ago when he was on the sidelines, getting stretched out, couldn't play that. That's just what I would be afraid of, and what kind of feels likely. I don't know. I was reading, I think Stefania Bell had this story out earlier this week about how Hall was basically just really frustrated, with not wanting his season to end to injury, because I guess that's kind of players feel. I shouldn't even say players feel because it is true in the NFL. If your season ends to injury, you kind of get labeled as injury prone, especially as a running back. That has implications for you down the line in contract negotiations and everything. So I totally get why Hall wants to be out there, but the fact that he's pushing so hard, likely against what the team wants probably and what the trainers probably want, it just gives me a lot of pause.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think, if you start Hall and he ends up being limited, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Ryan, we are on the clock here. Pick 4. Josh Allen is still on the board. Could also go Saquon, Joe Mixon. I don't know if anyone else is really in play for this pick.
Yeah, let's do a Josh Allen team. Josh Allen at 104 is pretty decent. May as well. I don't want to take Josh Allen at the 102, 103 feels pretty iffy, but once you get to the 104, 105, if he's still on the board, I'm definitely excited for it because, like I said at the top of the show, this Josh Allen Amon-Ra stack is relatively easy, assuming you can get Josh Allen at pick 4, pick 5, which is, I've seen him fall there in plenty of drafts. So, yeah, Ryan, unless you have any objections, I think our next pick is probably Amon-Ra. We could also go Gibbs here at pick 9. I don't know if you have any different thoughts. Yeah, no, we can definitely do Amon-Ra. I mean, it's basically, we were talking about this a little bit in the projections meeting this morning, but it's kind of hard because it's a perfect spot for everybody on the Lions. Amon-Ra has all these things working in his favor. The Bills are this big slot funnel. They play all this too high. All that benefits Amon-Ra, but I mean, for the running backs, the Bills have also been a genuinely bad team against opposing rushing attacks. Usually it doesn't matter because they're getting up. This is not a game environment where we expect that to happen. Bills, I tweeted out a stat from the Fantasy Points data account. I think 3rd most rushing yards per game and fantasy points per game allowed on the ground in their losses this year. So yeah, can easily see anyone kind of blowing up here on this Lions side, or even multiple guys. That's probably what I'm gonna do on the main slate. Maybe you can stack this up in BR. I wouldn't hate going Amon-Ra plus Monty plus Bills pass catcher if we just say this game completely clears. It's not as if that hasn't happened already this season with both of these teams.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously the nuts would be if you could somehow land Josh Allen, Gibbs plus Amon-Ra. I'm not sure that build is particularly possible, but yeah, Josh Allen, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra. I mean, honestly, I don't even know if you need to bring it back with a Bills receiver. There's a chance this offense is just so spread out that, Allen drops 40 and no Bills receiver really posts a slate winning score. If we were going to run it back with a Bills receiver though, do you have any preferences in terms of your favorites? We are about to be on the clock, so maybe we can save that for after this pick. But to me, it's pretty clearly Coleman and Cooper as my favorites. Although in BR, Shakir's going low enough that he's worthy of a pick. I think, we kind of have to go Chase Brown here, right?
Clear Chase Brown pick, yeah.
Yeah, way too strong of a value to pass up at pick 16. Absolutely no reason he should have made it to us. So far, we got a Josh Allen, Chase Brown, Amon-Ra build. Ryan, any thoughts on Bills pass catchers here?
I'm with you. I really prefer Cooper and Coleman just because on a per target basis, they're the guys that are running downfield. They're the guys that can be pushing the game environment more. The Lions also play a bunch of man coverage, which benefits both of those guys quite a bit. I think there's a perception in the community that the Lions are also like this really big slot funnel. That was true earlier in the season, but over the past 5 games or so, they've actually been really tough against the slot, which I think is like another genuine negative for Shakir outside of him having like a 4.2 ADOT or whatever it is. He's not someone I actually have all that much interest in. In DR, it's fine, like you said. But yeah, on the main slate, I'm just going to be playing the Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I feel similarly. Ryan, we are on the clock now. I'm kind of thinking Johnny Smith here, and then we can come back around, grab Rachaad White, and maybe finish it off with a Bills wide receiver, unless you feel strongly in a different direction. But I do see a pretty decent drop-off at tight end after Johnny Smith is off the board. So he's a guy that I want a good amount of exposure to. Great. All right. So we have a Josh Allen, Chase Brown, Amon-Ra, Johnny Smith team. Might be looking for another Bills receiver. I will queue up Rachaad White and we can start looking at some questions in the chat here. Again, really appreciate all the questions, guys. I know it's a big playoff week, so feel free to ask whatever you want. Ryan, this is one that will bring us both plenty of pain. Stone Smart or Kyle Pitts?
This is actually easy. This is the easiest start sit question I think I have answered on this show. Stone Smart had more catches in the second half last week than Kyle Pitts has had over the past 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
What are we doing?
That's the worst thing I've ever heard, dude.
It's Stone Smart. Play Stone Smart.
Wow. It's Stone Smart. That's your wow. That is I don't disagree. I
haven't looked at the projections. I
would
don't
give
know
a
if
lean
our
towards
projections
Smart.
agree, but
I am curious what the projections say. Pitts had the one long touchdown against that was Tampa Bay, right? And then outside of that, he's like basically done nothing all year.
This is messing me up because Pitts is not on the main slate. We have them projected the exact same in PPR scoring. So yeah, it's Stone Smart.
And Pitts is, Ferris is in the chat saying he's haunted. Pitts is haunting him. Everyone keeps telling me to start him. He keeps scoring 0 points. If Pitts is causing you this much mental dismay, I would lean towards Stone Smart. I don't think he will cause you as much emotional suffering as Kyle Pitts has this season. Ryan, we lucked out. Rachaad White made it back to us. So far in this draft, we have Josh Allen, Chase Brown, Rachaad White, Amon-Ra, Johnny Smith. Really great start. I think this is pretty close to my ideal team. Yeah. Ryan, where do you think we should go for, either a Bills wide receiver? We could also just take best wide receiver available, which would probably be either Jerry Jeudy or Devontae Adams based on our current projections. I think I want Amari Cooper the most. I could also be convinced on Keon Coleman. I guess Shakir too, but he's just not a guy who excites me because his ADOT is that of a running back.
Yeah, and especially with Jeudy off the board, I think I'm clearly Amari Cooper here.
All right.
And the reason for that is yes, Keon Coleman was playing very well before he got hurt. He was leading the team in routes before he got hurt. All that's great. But Amari Cooper just had 12 targets, 37% target share. He had the most air yards in a game by any wide receiver since Amari Cooper in 2023 in one of those Joe Flacco games.
Yeah.
So this is what are we doing? He just has the most clearly demonstrated upside. Both McDermott and Joe Brady after the game were we love when Amari Cooper's out there. We're better with him on the field. He got a lot of targets. Hopefully that keeps up. We want him to keep getting a lot of targets.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. They did trade for him. So Yeah, I think Cooper is like clearly who I prefer. On the on the main slate, I'm going to be mixing Coleman stuff in because he'll probably be a bit lower owned. He's a bit cheaper on the main slate, but yeah, for BR where they're all like very low owned anyway. Yeah, just give me Cooper.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of uncertainty with Keon Coleman expected back, Kincaid expected back, about the role for Cooper. We haven't seen all of the Bills' top pass catchers healthy in any individual game this season. But yeah, give me the guy who is coming off the most air yards in any game that we've seen this season. Ryan, we got a really interesting chat question. Navin Lowe says, only caught the tail end of the Brees conversation. What range of running backs do you see him in this week? Is benching him for Braylon, Jalen Warren, Elijah Moore crazy? This is a really good question because I do think the Brees Hall situation is just really tricky to navigate, especially from like a redraft start sit type scenario. Again, like we said, injury expert Edwin Porras sort of expects a decent chance that there could be a limited role for Brees Hall. I want to get his exact words so that I don't mix it up. He said Brees might be ready, but literally was voicing frustration 3 days ago. Yeah, so this is, it's a bit of an iffy scenario for Brees. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to work in more Braylon Allen, more Isaiah Davis. They are eliminated from the playoffs. Where are you at on Brees Hall? And we did draw the 101 in this goal line stand draft 12-man here. I think we got to go Jamar Chase, right? And then try to build out a Burrow team. That's probably what feels best to me from the 101 in a 12-man draft.
Yeah, I agree. That's what we should do.
Hell yeah.
As far as Brees, I don't think benching him for Elijah Moore is crazy. I think Moore is much less likely to give you like a total clunker of a score.
It's a great spot.
A 0. Yeah,
for Elijah Moore.
You talk about the Elijah Moore.
Yeah. I'll do Elijah Moore because I'm really excited about Elijah Moore this week. So Njoku's either going to be hobbled or he's not going to play. Cedric Tillman is out, which really just sort of leaves Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore sucking up most of the volume here. Kansas City is the most extreme slot funnel in the NFL, and if we assume David Njoku is either hobbled or out, he's sort of the main short area target in this Cleveland offense. Those vacated short area targets should go to a guy like Elijah Moore. So yeah, Elijah Moore is a guy that I like a lot, and I'm totally in line with Ryan where I think benching him for Braylon Allen, Jalen Warren, too much when it comes to Brees Hall. For Elijah Moore, though, I think it is a pretty interesting conversation, and if I were to bench him for anyone, it would certainly be Elijah Moore. I'm viewing that as sort of closer to a coin flip, though. I don't know, because you could argue like Brees just doesn't have much upside in a game where he's going to be hobbled, in a game where it's a great passing matchup for the New York Jets. Like maybe Rodgers just sort of lets it hang here. Do you have a strong take between Brees and Elijah Moore? I think I'd give a slight lean to Elijah because of kind of like you said, he's just less likely to burn you completely. There is a scenario where Brees Hall gets out there and only plays 40% of snaps or something, which would just be absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I think I would want to know like what your projection is against like your opponent in your playoff matchup. If you're
he actually just said he's projected to lose by around 5 points because of the Debo dud.
Okay,
so that's close to a coin flip. He's got maybe 45 to 48% win probability there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was the take I was gonna give was that I would be clearly Elijah if you were projected to win, just to kind of protect your floor there a little bit. It is a lot closer to a coin flip when it's that way. I think I would still lean Elijah because I think the biggest thing, two big things. One is that, as Jake said, that this could just be more of like a pass heavy type of game environment. And two, you guys were talking about this a little bit on Cashing Points, where Hilo brought up that kind of all of the end zone targets in this Browns offense have just gone to David Njoku. Makes sense. Like he's the biggest guy. And he was almost saying it in terms of like, he's concerned about like the Browns offense hitting a ceiling because of that. Like, will they be able to get into the end zone and actually do anything, or when they get into the red zone? But I almost hear that as like, okay, we've got vacated end zone targets. Those are my favorite type of vacated targets for Elijah Moore. So yeah, I think I'm leaning more just because I think the upside is actually similar between Moore and Brees Hall. Like we haven't seen Brees be this crazy explosive player that
Yeah,
really
he hasn't
this
looked
year. Yeah.
nearly as good on film as he has in years past. I mean, before it was like, oh, even if Brees Hall's only getting 12 carries, we know he can score an 80-yard touchdown. This year, we just really haven't seen that. And, again, with Aaron Rodgers, like team's pass rate is going to be boosted inside the 10. I think we've sort of talked ourselves into Elijah Moore being the better play. I just checked the fantasy points projections. These guys are within half a point of each other. And I just sort of see a bigger downside case for Brees Hall overall, which makes me want to lean toward Elijah here. So yeah, that was a good debate. I think that was honestly one of the best questions we've gotten all year in terms of start sit type stuff. Still 7 picks away, Ryan. So we can probably talk about another one of these questions here. Again, guys, really appreciate all the questions in the chat. If you have anything pressing for week 15, whether it's DFS, Battle Royale, start sit, feel free to ask while we draft these teams. Albert says, pick 2, half PPR, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney. Let's see. Mooney isn't a guy that I've thought about a lot since he isn't on the main slate. Same thing with DJ Moore. I would imagine one of these guys is going to end up being Jerry Jeudy, who's a really, really strong play this week with no Cedric Tillman. Do you have a preference between DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney?
Yeah, I just really prefer the Bears Vikings game environment. I think when I'm like doing my research during the week, I'm not like hyper intensively like writing everything down for games that are off the main slate. But I will say like the Bears and Vikings kind of kept popping up in terms of both secondaries have been able to get burned deep this year. We have seen like a very good usage floor for DJ Moore. We have seen plenty of spots where the Bears just let Caleb Williams drop back 50 times and kind of like try to play Superman if they get behind. So yeah, I think I'm clearly going DJ Moore over Mooney. I mean Mooney tore up this exact same secondary last week. So yeah, I think I'd just stick with DJ Moore to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think that would be my lean as well. I did check projections while Ryan was talking. We have DJ Moore projected for about a point more. And generally speaking, when it comes to start sits, you are just trying to projection max. Obviously, there are some nuanced scenarios where maybe you're playing for a bit more upside, or like a Brees Hall where his median's 12.5, but he does have like a serious downside case compared to a normal week. Ryan, we are on the clock here in this 12-man draft. Joe Burrow has fallen to us, so obviously he's a guy that we want. I also think I want a running back here, which is an interesting debate. Rachaad White would probably be my favorite. Could also argue for an Alvin Kamara share. I mean, Kamara is a pretty tough sell this week with Kendre Miller sort of coming on, especially inside the 10. Rachaad White would be our best projected play, I believe. Or no, we have him about a point behind Kamara. So yeah, what are your thoughts there?
I'd almost rather just go to Montgomery and say I'm like leveraging on that game a little bit, or
yeah,
I guess it's not really leverage, but getting a piece of that game. I think it's something worth thinking about in a lineup where you're starting with a Jamar Chase and locking yourself out of all the other pieces of that game.
Yeah, I think
I'm not that interested in Kamara either way.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's totally reasonable. And honestly, I mean, I don't know if this is the route that I'll go on a ton of teams, but I think an interesting direction you could sort of take a build like this is you take a Burrow, you take a Chase, and then you just sort of hammer as many Bills and Lions players as you possibly can. And just, then in that scenario, you only need to get 2 things right. You need Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase to connect, which they have been extremely consistently over the last 6 weeks. And then you just need the Detroit Buffalo game to go off, which it probably will given the season high total. So yeah, I definitely like that call. Probably overlooked Montgomery a little bit there. So far, Joe Burrow, David Montgomery, Jamar Chase, we are 20 picks away. So again, guys, any pressing questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Ryan, I also have Brees Hall on my season-long team. So maybe I could ask you a start sit question when it comes to Brees Hall, because I am not exactly sure what direction I want to go. My bench is a little thin. I do have Adam Thielen. And I also have Amari Cooper. So those would sort of be my 2 other options there versus Brees Hall. I am not really sure what I want to do. Obviously, this is a playoff must-win matchup. It's a bit surprising to me, by the way, just opening the ESPN app, seeing Breece Hall projected for 16.5 points, given sort of the injury question marks around him. I imagine that probably will push a lot of season-long players who are at least playing on ESPN toward Breece Hall. Obviously, our projection is much more pessimistic on Hall this week. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on Thielen, Amari Cooper, Breece Hall to help me hopefully advance to the next round of the playoffs?
I mean, it feels correct to play Thielen to me.
Yeah, that was sort of my lean too. I have Breece in there right now, but I'm really on the fence about it.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, I mean, we have Thielen straight up projected higher than Hall. So
all right. Well, that probably does it for me then. I think that's all I need to see. Yeah, always interesting seeing like the massive projection discrepancies. You don't really see it a lot between DFS sites because I think we're all, whether it's us or Stochastic or ETR or Roto Grinders, any of the big, DFS sites, they're all pretty sharp and they're all always looking at each other's stuff and looking to improve their projections. I think these season-long projections that you get from like Yahoo, CBS, ESPN, they don't have that same sort of market pressure to be, maybe quite as good as they can be. And I do wonder if that steers people in the wrong direction more often than not.
I think it does. In fact, I think I've told you this before. I think that it like lowers people's faith, or like the general fantasy population's faith in projections to a
that's
point.
Actually a really good call. Yeah,
is suboptimal. Yeah,
yeah. I think that's probably where one of the biggest like disconnects is when I'm talking to subs in like our Start Sit channel or whatever. Is like hammering like, look, our staff spends a ton of time on our projections. Like it's something we all put a lot of effort into. They're really, really good. You should use them. I think that's probably a pretty sharp angle that, yeah, ESPN's projections being bad or CBS's projections being bad and people sort of being burnt by those will make them a lot less trustworthy of, the fantasy points projections, which I think just are objectively better than anything you'd get from a free season long sort of provider. So I do think that's a pretty interesting observation there. Well, Ryan, there is a chance Rachaad White comes back to us, which would be the absolute nuts here for this team. So far,
okay, Jake, I'm going to be honest. I did not realize we were in a 12-man draft.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, this would be a solid start for 6-man: Joe Burrow, David Montgomery, Jamar Chase. For a 12-man, I'm really, really excited about this. I think Burrow Chase is going to be one of my favorite stacks. It's just really hard to do. Even if you land like a top 2 pick, there's a decent chance somebody at like the round 2-3 turn could take a Burrow Higgins, which is always tough. So yeah, we're off to a hot start here. If we land Rachaad White, I will be very, very excited about this team. I do kind of feel like we have to go running back here. I know this is something I've harped on week after week after week in these 12-man drafts, is you do not want your 6th round pick to be a running back under like basically any scenario. The 6th round running backs available in these 12-man drafts are always terrible. So I definitely like going running back here. It would be so awesome if Rachaad White made it back to us, but even if not, assuming White's off the board, what direction would you want to look?
Yeah. I kind of said this earlier. All these other guys I just see as game script bets. So Pacheco is probably the strongest of those. Yeah, because he's the only one that's favored that's on the board.
Yeah.
So that would be decent. I think probably the most fragile like spread other than that is gonna be Pat's Cardinals. So I think Stevenson I'd probably rank it Rachaad White, Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson as my preferences. Yeah, I don't know. We've just seen the Cardinals be in a lot of really gross games. We've seen Ramondre Stevenson average like 17 expected fantasy points per game. Plus, over the past 5 weeks, he's way better when the Pats are winning or not getting blown out. I think he's one that's kind of going overlooked here in terms of BR ADP and overlooked on the main slate as well. Just in terms of like leverage on all this Cardinals ownership that's supposedly going to happen, but that I'm not totally sure is actually going to.
I am a bit skeptical of the Cardinals ownership this weekend in DFS. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to see a 15 to 20% projection on Kyler Murray's ownership and say, Hey, I don't want anything to do with that. Ryan, it looks like we actually hit the stone nuts in terms
That's
of
crazy.
the players who fell to us, getting Rachaad White and Calvin Ridley here. I think these are the obvious picks, unless you have any objections.
Yeah, do it instant.
All
Let's
right.
go.
Yeah, this is a layup. Obviously, with Rachaad White, I mean, we're expecting a bell cow role in the second most valuable fantasy backfield in the NFL by fantasy points per game. And then with Calvin Ridley, we get the great correlation there with the Cincinnati game. And obviously, the Cincinnati pass defense has been a complete disaster. So should be a decent opportunity for Will Levis to actually connect with Calvin Ridley on some of these deep balls. I know some of you guys might be wondering, why does my underdog screen look a little bit different than the default underdog screen? As you can see, I have the totals here. You can see the implied totals. You can also see this really great combination tool where we can see that, hey, we don't have any teams that have both David Montgomery and Rachaad White so far through our drafts, the roughly 15 drafts that I've done. These tools are courtesy of bestballoverlay.com. They've sort of partnered with us for this great Battle Royale season. You guys can save $10 a month on these tools with promo code PARTY. So definitely worth checking out. We had Pat, also known as Fantasy Dog Pound, on the show about a month ago. And he was great. He's one of the people behind the bestballoverlay.com tools. And I love supporting the great people in the industry who build cool stuff. And Pat is certainly one of them. So definitely check out bestballoverlay.com if you are interested in getting some Battle Royale or Best Ball tools. Ryan, we are still 17 picks away, so we can get to a couple more chat questions here. Again, guys, really appreciate all the questions. Alvin Kamara or Brian Robinson? What do you think there? I think from a floor perspective, Kamara is probably the better play. I would be a bit curious where you're at in terms of your projected matchup. That might influence me slightly, because there is a very rare scenario, Ryan, where Jake Haener actually shows up to play and Washington has to turn towards the pass and Brian Robinson doesn't quite get you there. That's very thin. It is possible. I'm not in love with Kamara's upside, given that we've seen Kendra Miller sort of steal the inside the 10 stuff. I'm really curious where you're at on this question.
Yeah, I think so like if this was like a DFS question, I would just instantly say Brian Robinson, because he's live for multiple touchdowns. Like we've seen him score multiple touchdowns at points this year. Kamara, though, I think the target share and the role is just so good that I don't think you can really pass that up in season long, outside of like you're a 15-point underdog or something in your matchup. Maybe then you can talk me into like we're YOLOing the 30-point Brian Robinson multi-rushing touchdown game or something. But yeah, I mean, even with not with Haener, with Rattler, Kamara had like a 25% target share or something ridiculous in those Rattler games. Like, and I expect kind of similar with Haener. I don't know. I don't want to like say that I think Jake Haener is going to play well or whatever, but I like that he was coming out in the media this week and saying that he wants to go sling the ball around. Like, good for him. He's definitely not approaching this in like a meek way. So,
well, I mean, he took that very sassy photo shoot.
Yes.
So that's most of what I know about Jake Haener are those the yassification of our NFL quarterbacks. Those are some interesting pictures. Ryan, we're coming up on our final pick. We need a tight end, and obviously these 6th-round tight ends are not going to be great. Is Ferguson still on the board? He'd probably be the best projected.
I think he's easily the best. Yeah.
He is probably our pick here. Do you want to talk about Jake Ferguson a little bit? It looks like he'll make it back to us, assuming he doesn't get picked here.
Yeah, so the Panthers.
Never.
Never mind. Jake Ferguson sucks.
Awful. Yeah, Jake Ferguson.
Never played Jake Ferguson in anything.
All right, so Freiermuth. Really trying to figure out who the best projected is. It's tough. Probably my
guess is that it's Otten, but I don't know if I love Otten plus Rachaad.
I don't love Otten either. None of these options are good.
I don't love anybody here. Yeah.
Freiermuth, I guess, with no Pickens. I mean, it's about a point.
That offense is so dead.
All right. Yeah. Let's go Kate Otten.
Yeah.
Yeah, tight end plus running back I think is more than fine, especially in a 12-man. I'm not too worried about being exactly optimal. I mean, if the Tampa Bay offense has a solid game there, we'll still end up in a good spot. But that team ended up as a Burrow, David Montgomery, Rashad White, Jamar Chase, Calvin Ridley, Kate Otten team. I mean, this is pretty close to, I think, like best possible outcome for a team drawing the 101 in a 12-man. I'm really, really happy with this team. If T. Higgins had fallen to us, I wouldn't have hated like a Joe Burrow, Chase, Higgins build, but that would have left us in a really tough spot at running back. Obviously, we still would have managed to get Rashad White, but really like the way this team turned out. Ryan, while I look for another draft here, what do you think about Mike Evans or Zach Charbonnet? And then we can get to Anthony's quarterback question after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Ken Walker is doubtful. Last I saw,
Yep.
I'll just answer the question as if Walker's doubtful and not playing. I think it's clearly Zach Charbonnet. Look what he just did last week. Like every time Walker's been out, Charb has been above like an 85% snap shares, getting all of the inside the 10 work, all of the high value touches. I wouldn't expect him to do what he did last week. Like the Seahawks offensive line suddenly decided that they could actually play for the first time all season, which shows up in the numbers, like adjusted yards before contact. All of our film charters were telling me the same thing, that like Ken Walker must have been really pissed that it's like the game he sits out was the one time that there were actually holes to run through.
Yeah.
I think it's clearly Sharp, from like a ceiling and a floor perspective. The second part of the question, Jordan Love or Anthony Richardson, is more interesting to me, Jake, and I'll throw it to you first, I guess.
Yeah, I did just want to echo what you said on the Evans versus Charbonnet call. Definitely outright prefer Charbonnet. When it comes to Love and Richardson, this is always tough for me because I never really look at the primetime games until after the main slate. We have Love projected for 16.1, Richardson projected for 18.6. So there is a pretty significant projection gap there. I totally understand the concern with AR going against this Denver defense. I mean, he is a guy who struggled against the blitz, struggled against pressure. He's also the greatest athlete to ever play quarterback, and he offers a pretty strong rushing floor. Colts are also dogs here, so, probably should be pushed to get the ball in his hands a bit more than Jordan Love will. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Packers just kind of pack it in and go extremely run heavy over the past 5 or 6 games or so. Yep. Love's fantasy scoring has suffered for that. I don't know that this matchup against the Seahawks is like when they get pushed. So yeah, I think I'm leaning Richardson. I guess like we talk about this every week, or let's pick first. Collins.
What do you think of doing I was going to throw out like a Houston, either a Houston or a Miami stack. I really like when I draw like sort of back end of the first round pick this week. Really like going Nico and Tyreek. Could also go Nico and Achane. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'd vote for Nico Achane actually.
All right. Let's do that. Yeah, Achane's looking at a 17% target share, so he's a really easy guy to stack with Tua. I'm also fine with CJ Stroud stacks. I mean, I totally get that Stroud obviously hasn't been a world beater this year, but if the game environment shoots out, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he outscored Tua this week. Go on your Jordan Love take.
Yeah, I get not as much of a Jordan Love take as it is an Anthony Richardson take, I guess. Like we say this in our projections meeting every single week. Like Anthony Richardson could legitimately score like 4 or 5 fantasy points.
It's crazy that there's
given week.
That there's a starting NFL quarterback who could throw for legit 80 yards this week. Like that is totally on the table.
So that I guess. If you're like a very big favorite in your matchup and you just are kind of needing to play defense, I think playing Love over A-Rich is totally fine. But if it's like relatively even to, especially if you're an underdog, it's clearly Richardson for me.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best analysis you could give on something like this. Underdog close to neutral. I think you want to capture the upside that Richardson offers. And then if you're, you know, a 10 plus point favorite, I'd rather just take the sure thing with, you know, Love might not get you 30, but he's almost certainly getting you 15. And you can't quite say that about Anthony Richardson, even though he has played a little better since coming back from the benching. Ryan, we have Devon Achane. We have Nico Collins. We are coming up on the 3-4 turn here. Would be pretty easy to go like a Jonnu. We could wait on Tua. What are your thoughts? I'd imagine we're probably taking Jonnu no matter what, right?
Yeah, Jonnu, and then can figure out which receiver we want to take, I guess, is the way.
Yeah. CD, Sutton, Higgins would be our best projection, I would assume. We could also just go Rashad White, grab our second running back here.
I mean, we can probably get White later too.
Yeah, no, you're right. We probably could get White with our last pick. Let's see. I'm going to check projections really quick, but I kind of
I'm fine going Higgins. I'm fine going Higgins.
Yeah, I mean,
I can tell you confidently he's the highest projection. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Ryan, you said this at the top of the show. He's our wide receiver 3 by half point PPR projections on this main slate, which is absolutely insane. Ahead of Amon-Ra, ahead of Tyreek Hill, ahead of AJ Brown, ahead of Mike Evans.
Yeah,
really strong.
Kind of nuts.
Yeah, really strong projection.
I think like sorry to cut you off, but there is like I think maybe this only is applying to Higgins because I think people understand that like Burrow and Chase can do it on any given play. I think people see like the matchup against the Titans and get scared of playing opposing passing games. I'm not when it's the Bengals who like lead the league easily by 2x in pass rate over expectation.
Yeah.
We know that they aren't taking their foot off the gas. Joe Burrow is super motivated to get a lot of production to his 2 receivers, sticking it to Bengals ownership as much as he possibly can. Like
bankrupting Mike Brown.
Yeah. Shuffling around Higgins' agent and his representation. He has the same agent as Jamar Chase now, just trying to keep 3 of them together. Yeah, I love that. And if I was a Bengals fan, that would like obviously like tough season for you guys and how it turned out and everything, but that would make me feel so good about my quarterback and about like the future of my franchise. Yeah.
If they can,
an absolute Chad.
If they can keep Higgins and Chase and obviously improve the defense, I mean, this is a Super Bowl contending team. Like Joe Burrow, if the team had a winning record, would be right there with Josh Allen, you know, at the front of the MVP conversation. And it's just such a shame. This team has been a disaster. From what I can tell, you know, my ear to the ground in Bengals fandom land, a lot of Bengals fans are sort of rooting for them to lose out. 1, for the draft pick, and 2, with the hope that Zach Taylor gets fired and they can land a better offensive coach. I think what's really
can you imagine if they got Ben Johnson? I would
my God, dude.
I would be horrified.
I mean, Burrow would be he'd be set up for the greatest pocket passing season of all time. Like, I don't know if he could compete with 2019 Lamar Jackson for the record in fantasy points per game, but he would definitely be the greatest non-Konami quarterback in fantasy of all time, I think, without a doubt.
You know what would probably happen, which we'll do our picks and then I'll get this take.
We can keep ranting about the Bengals, but we have Achane, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Jonnu Smith. Rashad White is queued up. Hopefully he is not taken. Would be pretty easy to go Tua here. We could also go Stroud. Do you have a strong preference? I
just clearly prefer Tua. I prefer the guy that scores fantasy, that has been scoring fantasy points this year.
That's fair. And Tua's game logs like last 3 weeks have looked really, really strong in terms of just raw fantasy points scored. I'm kind of curious where our half PPR projections are on these guys because I'd imagine they're a little close. Yeah, they're within like half a point of each other. So really not a tremendous drop off, but I totally get the preference for Tua. So this is going to end up being a Tua, Devon Achane, Rashad White, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Jonnu Smith team. Ryan, we can get to any last second questions and then get out of here. Anthony says, appreciate the help, guys. Thank you for all you do. The stats have helped me tremendously this season. We really appreciate that, Anthony. Always nice to get the kind comments. I mean, Ryan, I'm sure, you know, you, just like me, have been told on Twitter many times to kill yourself. So the nice comments always feel pretty good. We do really appreciate that kind of stuff. Obviously, we couldn't do any of this without you guys. I mean, really cool. I know, speaking for Ryan, really cool that we get to talk about football and, get paid for it, especially fantasy football. So yeah, this is awesome. And, the nice comments always warm my heart. Ryan, I don't know about you, but like, whenever I find a YouTuber who has less Twitter followers than me that I like, I always DM him and I'm just like, I love your stuff, because I know they'll respond.
Dude,
which I know they'll appreciate the comment too. So
I literally, I did this. I don't know if you're a Survivor fan or if there are any Survivor fans in chat. I literally did this with Sam Phelan, who is on the show Survivor right now.
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were talking about Survivor pools for a second, because
no. Yeah, sorry, Survivor, the CBS reality show. There's a Titans beat reporter that is on the show right now. He like has made it very far. I DM'd him before the season because I was like, I know he's going to respond to me. Like we're in the same industry. Right. I have more followers than him. I just told him like good luck, whatever, blah blah blah. But, no, so yes, I relate to that a lot.
All right. Hell yeah. Love hearing that. And then final question before we get out of here, Ryan. Higgins or Lamb this week? This is an interesting question. I would sort of lean Higgins on first instinct. I want to check our projections, Ryan. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, same with me. Give me the passing offense that I think is actually going to be functional. Like the Cowboys, all they want to do is run the ball. I think they're going to continue to do it even if the Panthers get up on them. I think Mike McCarthy just wants to feed Rico Dowdle at this point. I mean that is what has worked the most for this offense in the Cooper Rush era. So yeah, that's just what I would expect. So yeah, give me Higgins over Lamb.
Yeah, I think that is reasonable. 3-point projection gap between the two. So Higgins is pretty clearly the best play in terms of median. I think I also like him a bit more in terms of floor and ceiling here. Well, guys, I think that'll just about do it for our week 15 show. Me and Ryan will both be in Discord throughout the remainder of the weekend. If you have any sort of follow-up questions, specifically in the Underdog Battle Royale Discord, I will be dropping in our weekly rankings, which you can upload straight into Underdog, sort of just a blend of our ADP or of Underdog's ADP and our projections. So definitely helpful if you're just trying to spot like the easiest values according to the Fantasy Points projection. So keep an eye out for that in the Fantasy Points Discord tomorrow, right around noon. Again, that channel is completely free. So if you guys are watching this show, even if you're not a Fantasy Points subscriber, you can hop into that Discord. You can download those rankings. You can upload them into Underdog, and you can still benefit from the Fantasy Points projections and our top values. And you can also still ask me and Ryan plenty of questions because, again, that channel is free. So really no excuse to not be in there. But we really appreciate all the questions, guys. Really appreciate all the chat engagement. Good luck to everyone in their Week 15 playoff matchups. And good luck, of course, with your DFS lineups and your Battle Royale lineups. We will see you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.